こんにちは。今日のスピーキングを始めます。Theatrical music, in a pattern that was to repeat itself after the birth of opera 200 years later. The secular theater in the Middle Ages established itself either as light-hearted interludes in serious moralities, or as deliberate parody tolerated by the Church as a safety valve to consistent piety. The annual Feast of Fools in 15th century Paris, for instance, incorporated an obscene parody of the Mass, performed in song and dance within the church. By the year 1400, numerous comedies and farces had appeared, usually performed on festival occasions in aristocratic houses and open stages in municipal squares. These plays often employed musical forces comparable to those of the religious plays and used them for similar purposes. Choir boys from the church sometimes took part, but surviving texts suggest that there was little choral music as such. The individual actors incorporated part of song, chanted monophonically to embellish or heighten the dramatic effect, and dancing to specific instrumental music also had a regular place. In the entertainment, professional musicians might be hired and might also be required to act. The constituent parts of the entertainment varied widely place to place. The fact that except for songs, documents of the period contain almost no music directly linked with the theater is thought to indicate that very little original instrumental music was written for theatrical purposes at this time. Whatever was suitable for weddings, banquets, and other feasts perhaps served a theatrical purpose just as well. Musicians probably had little or no acquaintance with musical notation and played pieces from their regular repertoire. Atomism. Atomism is a doctrine that explains complex phenomena in terms of aggregates of fixed particles or units. This philosophy has found its most successful application in natural science. According to the atomistic views, the material universe is composed of minute particles, which are combined to be relatively simple and immutable and too small to be visible. The multiplicity of visible forms in nature, then, is based upon differences in these particles and in their configurations, hence any observable changes must be reduced to changes in these configurations. Atomism is in essence an analytical doctrine. It regards observable forms in nature not as intrinsic forms but as aggregates, in contrast to holistic theories which explain the parts in terms of qualities displayed by the whole. Atomism explains observable properties of the whole by those of its components and of their configurations. In order to understand the historical development of atomism and especially its relation to modern atomistic theory, it is necessary to distinguish between atomism in the strict sense and other forms of atomism. Atomism in the strict sense is characterized by the 3 points. The atoms are absolutely indivisible, qualitatively identical, i.e. distinct only in shape, size, and motion, and combinable with each other only by juxtaposition. Other forms of atomism are less strict on these points. Behavioralism. Behavioralism became a major thrust of American psychology for the first half of the 20th century, when such psychologists Clark L. Hope at Yale University and B.F. Skinner at Harvard argued that humans sought any inference from behavior and that all psychology could be or should be concerned only with behavior. It was not until about 1960s that American psychologists returned to the definition of psychology as the investigation of human soul as well as behavior. A major influence in turning American psychology to behaviorism came from the work of the Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov. Pavlov discovered what he called the conditioned reflex. Pavlov observed that when he paired a neutral conditioned stimulus, such as buzzer, with a natural unconditioned stimulus, such as food, the reflex response to the food salivation eventually came to be elicited by the buzzer. Pavlov called the response to the conditioned stimulus a conditioned reflex. Pavlov's research on the conditioned reflex became the model for a great deal of research in American psychology, which regarded learning and conditioning as major concerns. This model was extended to all subdisciplines within psychology. Early studies in child psychology, for example, were modeled after studies of animal learning and had children learning in mazes not unlike those used in animal investigation. Although psychologists are still concerned with learning, it no longer holds a central place in psychology that it once did. Memory and motivation. One round at the burning candle is held by feeling the heat, the ability of the brain to register the notion of heat, remember it. The later recall it means that the piece of that the that the, that the that a specific piece of information has been learned. Memory, therefore, is essential to learning. Learning is a selective process. Far more is perceived than remembered. Otherwise, the mind would be a storehouse of miscellaneous, unsorted data. There appear to be three levels of memory: immediate, short-term, and long-term. Immediate memory lasts no more than a couple of seconds, the time it takes for a sensory impression to register. Short-term memory is a matter of seconds or minutes. One looks up a phone number in the directory and makes a call. By the time the call is completed, the number has normally been forgotten. Long-term memory can last a lifetime, but some experts believe that information may be lost through disuse or may become flawed through reinterpretation. Information often is transferred from short-term to long-term memory. One way this is done is by repetition and rehearsal, much the way an actor might memorize his or her lines from a script. Novel or vivid experiences seem to be more readily shifted to long-term memory. Other means of transfer are by the association of an unfamiliar name or fact with something that is already known, or grouping things together so that fewer facts at the time need to be observed. Many strategies are taught for improving memory, and most people develop their own devices. Political science in the US. Political science was taken up enthusiastically in the United States, a nation with a history of political experimentation. Some of the most notable works on government were written about the American system. The debates about ratification of the Constitution led to the writing of the Federalist Papers by John Jay, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton in 1787. In the 1830s, Alexis Tocqueville published his Democracy in America, probably the best analysis of United States political institutions ever written. 2 generations later, the British writer James Bryce published The American Commonwealth. Politics has played a significant role in the American consciousness ever since the colonial era, as early as 1642, before the term political science was coined. Henry Dunster, president of Harvard College, added to the curriculum a course on ethics and politics. In the mid-19th century, the president of Yale College, Theodore Dwight Woodley, introduced a course in political philosophy into the school. The first permanent professorship in political science was created at Columbia University in 1857. The first man to teach the course was Francis Lever, a German immigrant and author of On Civil Liberty and Self-Government, 1853. In 1880, a whole school of political science was established at Columbia by John W. Burgess. In the same year, the Academy of Political Science was founded, another professional organization. The American Political Science Association was founded in 1903. From 1880, faculties of political science began appearing at more colleges and universities. 終わり。